It's often the case that when we're building out an app, we want to reference some kind of parameter that changes within a URI. For example, users/1 would show information about the user with an ID of 1, or with the ID of Alex Garrett Smith, or whatever username you're using. Let's go ahead and hit this page. Of course, at the moment we get a 404 not found because we haven't created this, but let's create out a route here to match up to what we've just hit in the browser. So let's go ahead and define out a get route. This is going to be /users, and we need a route parameter here, and we need to know how to pick that up, either within a closure or within a controller. So to do this, we use curly braces and then the name of the thing that we're trying to access. So for example, in this case, that would be a username. Let's create out a really simple closure here and then figure out how to access this value. Now there are a couple of ways to do this. You can access this through the request object, which can be injected into a function like this, a closure like this, or a controller. But you can actually grab this from the property that's passed directly into here. So if I go ahead and just return that username and we come back over, you can see that that will basically just give us out exactly what we need. And this is useful when, for example, we want to pass in a value, maybe look this up in the database, and then go ahead and return it to a view so we can display information about that particular user. We'll look at this a little bit more in detail later when we cover route model binding, because most of the time when you're passing in a user, you'd probably just want to define user and have this looked up for you. Laravel has a feature called route model binding, which will look up a user or any model that you pass in to your routes, and it will instantly resolve this out of the database for you, so you don't need to manually look it up. So that's different to most frameworks where you normally have to pass in, say, a post ID, look this up manually in the database by running a query. But we can do things like post, which will fetch us the post model with an ID. And again, we'll look at that a little bit later in more detail. Now you can have multiple parameters in your routes as well. So for example, you could have users/user ID /username. Not that you would actually do that, but that is possible. And they would just be passed as a list into here. So let's just call this ID and username. Notice as well, these map up to the variable names that you get back in here as well. So if we just go ahead and return here ID and concatenate on the username, and we go over and change this to users/1/Alex, you can see we get both of them out there. So there's no limit to the amount of parameters that you can pass into a route. And these can also be passed into post routes, delete routes, patch routes, any other HTTP verb that you have in here.